Ethan had learned how to be invisible. Years of working late-night shifts as a janitor in Hale Corp, the tallest, coldest, most expensive building in the entire city, had taught him how to blend into marble floors and glass walls like he was just another fixture. It suited him. Being invisible meant he could work in peace, finish quickly, and get home to his daughter, who still sometimes woke up crying after nightmares she never explained. But on this particular night, as he mopped the gleaming 48th floor hallway, a pair of rapid, nervous footsteps disturbed the calm rhythm he relied on. He felt them before he heard them, a jittery presence trembling down the hallway like a heartbeat skipping out of rhythm. When he turned, he expected an assistant rushing with overdue documents or maybe a panicked intern running from a scolding. What he didn't expect, what no one would ever expect, was Celeste Hale, CEO of the entire corporation, heir to an empire, and the kind of woman who made boardrooms fall silent just by breathing. Except now she wasn't the graceful, polished ice queen he saw in news articles. She looked unsteady. Her normally perfect bun was slightly loose, one strand falling against her cheek. Her expensive designer coat wasn't buttoned, her eyes were bright, not with fury, but with something far more fragile. "Mr. Ethan," she said, and Ethan stiffened. She never used his name. Never used anyone's name unless it was tied to a title, a company, or a contract. "Ma'am," he answered, confused as she stepped closer. She was clutching a folder to her chest like she was protecting something delicate, though knowing the 48th floor, it was probably a stack of multi-million-dollar reports. "Can I talk to you?" she asked. Ethan blinked. Talk to him. The janitor whose existence barely registered to most executives. He leaned the mop handle against the nearest wall. "Of course. Is something wrong?" She laughed, a sound too soft, too broken to belong to a woman whose firm once bought out an entire competitor just because their CEO insulted her coffee order. "Everything is wrong," she whispered, her voice cracking. Ethan said nothing. People broke in front of him sometimes. Exhausted interns, overworked night shift analysts, a security guard who once cried because he couldn't afford his son's medication. Ethan had a calmness that made people open up, probably because he had spent years keeping himself together for his daughter. But never, not in his wildest dreams, did he imagine Celeste Hale would be one of them. She stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was barely a whisper. "I don't have a husband." Ethan stared. That was not what he expected her to say. Okay," he said awkwardly, unsure what response was appropriate. She swallowed hard. "I don't have anyone." Her voice trembled. "No partner. No friends I can trust. My relatives think I'm a machine built to make them richer. My board thinks I'm an obstacle they can't control. My staff is terrified of disappointing me." She looked away, blinking fiercely. "I walk into a room, and people either straighten like I'm a threat, or smile like they want something." Ethan's heart softened. Loneliness could be quiet or loud, but hers sounded suffocating. "Ms. Hale." "Celeste," she interrupted quickly, almost desperately. "Please." Ethan had never heard anyone say, "please," with so much exhaustion. "Celeste," he repeated, watching her shoulders drop like she'd been holding her breath for years. "I'm sorry you're going through all that." She nodded, pressing the folder tighter to her chest. "I've seen you," she whispered suddenly. "I've watched you in the hallways. You laugh with the guards. You talk to the interns like they're real people. You help the new cleaners when they struggle." She glanced at him with something like admiration. "And your daughter, Isla, right? Yesterday she brought you that little lunchbox. The pink one." Ethan flushed. "Yeah, she likes to surprise me." "You hugged her like the world could collapse and that hug would save it," Celeste murmured, her eyes softening. "I don't think anyone has ever hugged me like that." Ethan didn't know what to say. He could handle crying interns. He could handle panicked employees. But this giant of a woman breaking down in front of him, was different. "I need to ask you something," Celeste whispered. She stepped closer. Too close, and Ethan felt his breath hitch as he caught the faint scent of lavender on her coat. Her next words came out cracked, fragile, terrified. "Can I have a date with you?" Ethan stepped back in shock, nearly tripping over the mop bucket. A date," she nodded. Just one. One real date. No board members watching me. No assistants pretending to care. No reporters following me. Just dinner. With someone who doesn't want anything from me. Her eyes met his, shimmering with the raw, unpolished truth. I want to remember what it feels like to be human. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. You're a CEO. I'm a janitor. People will talk. People always talk, she whispered. But for once, I want to live. He thought of Isla. He thought of the years he'd spent avoiding relationships, focusing on survival, on giving his daughter a stable life. He thought of the crushing vulnerability in Celeste's eyes. Why me? He asked quietly. Celeste didn't hesitate. Because you're the only person in this building who looks at me without fear or expectation. The hallway felt too quiet. Too intimate. Too full of a truth neither of them had planned for. Ethan exhaled slowly. Okay, he said at last. One date. Celeste inhaled sharply, her eyes widening with something like relief. And then she smiled. Small, shy, breathtaking, and Ethan realized that for the first time since he'd seen her on magazine covers, she actually looked real. Part 2. The next evening, Ethan stood outside the old neon-lit diner near his apartment, tapping his foot nervously. It had been years, since he'd gone on a date. His entire life revolved around his daughter, bills, and keeping his job. Romance was something he had boxed up and buried. But Celeste had chosen this place eagerly when he listed a few options. Somewhere normal, she had said. Somewhere people are loud and unedited. He didn't understand it then. He did now, because when she arrived, she looked like someone tasting freedom for the first time. Gone were her corporate heels and structured suits. She wore jeans, a cream sweater that looked too soft for someone known as the Ice Queen executive, and her hair fell in loose waves over her shoulders. She looked young, human, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with power. Is this place really okay? She asked, staring at the neon sign with a mixture of curiosity and awe. Ethan smiled. It's perfect. Inside, the diner buzzed with children laughing, pans sizzling, waitresses calling out orders. A toddler threw a piece of pancake. A teenager cried over a milkshake breakup. A couple argued over who forgot the car keys. Celeste looked around like she'd stepped onto another planet. People are loud, she murmured. That's how you know it's real, Ethan joked. They sat in a booth near the window. Celeste stared at the laminated menu like it was a puzzle. So, I just pick something. Yep, and people bring it to you. That's usually how restaurants work, Ethan teased gently. She gave him a playful glare that surprised him. It wasn't cold, wasn't harsh. It was cute. When the waiter came, she flinched like she wasn't used to being approached casually. What would you like, darling? The waiter asked cheerfully. Celeste blinked. Darling. No one called her darling. I'll have what he's having, she stammered. Ethan chuckled, placing his order. As soon as the waiter walked away, she covered her face. I panicked. It's a burger, Ethan said, amused. You'll be fine. When the food arrived, big burgers dripping with sauce, hot fries, milkshakes topped with whipped cream, Celeste stared like she had been handed treasure. It smells amazing. Take a bite. She did, and froze. Then her eyes widened. Why is this incredible? Because it's made by people who don't charge you for the air you breathe, Ethan said, and Celeste laughed. Really laughed, so unexpectedly loud that several people turned. She didn't even notice. Hours passed. She told him things she'd never said to anyone. Inheriting the company too young, losing her parents early, being thrust into a world where one mistake could ruin thousands of lives. Ethan listened, not because she was powerful, but because she was finally letting herself be known. He told her about Isla. About the nights he stayed awake sewing her torn backpack because they couldn't afford a new one. About working 2 jobs after her mother left. About learning to be both father and mother at once. Celeste listened as if every word mattered. You're stronger than anyone in my boardroom, she whispered. I mean that. When they left the diner, the night was cool and quiet. They stood under a flickering street lamp, neither wanting the moment to end. Celeste took a nervous breath. Ethan, thank you. For what? For showing me a world that isn't marble floors and glass walls. She hesitated, stepping closer. For making me feel like a person. Ethan's voice softened. You are a person, Celeste. The way she looked at him then, hopeful, fragile, yearning, made something warm unfurl in his chest. Can I ask one more thing? She whispered. Anything. She bit her lip. Would you want to go on a second date? Ethan smiled, reaching up to gently brush a strand of hair from her cheek. I was hoping you'd ask. Her breath caught. A soft, radiant smile spread across her face. No polish, no performance, just real joy. Then, I'd like to see you again, she whispered. And under the dim streetlight, in the quiet corner of a world neither of them fully belonged to, something tender and unexpected formed between a lonely CEO and the single dad who finally made her feel seen. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't a fantasy. It was something far more real, something that had the power to change both of their lives forever.